this video playlist. This is the Moms Lives Matter playlist. This is on Esther. Now, I don't think Esther was a mom quite at this point in life. This is when she was an orphan in Persia. Now, whether she was an orphan because her parents were dead or she was an orphan because she was trafficked. Anyway, she was ended up being raised by her cousin Mordecai. And the story of Esther is kind of like that TV show The Bachelor, where one man picks a bunch of women, to date to try to find a new wife. Well, pretty much in the story of Esther, the king and queen throw a party, but the queen refuses to come, and he gets mad and he divorces her, and then he's trying to find a new queen, and he takes all these virgins in, including Esther, and it's like kind of like that TV show, The Bachelor. And anyway, while she was in there, she caught wind of a royal scam, a Holocaust, pretty much. One of these people, Haman, was plotting and planning to annihilate all the Jews. And Esther, she stuck her neck out, risked her life to approach the king, even though, she wasn't really allowed to do so. But, she was received with favor, and, her bravery led to a complete reversal of their fate. Like, they were slotted for death, and turns out, her doing that, they hung like 10 people in that story. Haman and his 10 sons were all hanged. And this was King Xerxes. It was King Xerxes that was searching for a new queen. Esther, she kind of kept her Jewish identity secret because, these people didn't like the Jews. And the Haman was the high-ranking official, and he wanted to destroy them all because her cousin Mordecai didn't bow down to him. It was just like a vendetta, I guess. I don't know. But Mordecai did urge Esther to intercede, and she was positioned as a queen exactly for that purpose. And she even said, if I die, I die. If I die, I die. She didn't care. She risked her life to try to save her people, and she did. And those were the days of Purim. Esther 9:26 tells us these are the days of Purim, from the word pur, P-U-R, because of all the instructions in the letter and everything they had experienced. It was when Esther reclaimed one half of the kingdom from the king's regime. Esther 9:28 says these days should be remembered and observed in every generation, in every family, in every province, in every city, that the days of Purim should never fail to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of these days die out among their descendants. You have to remember the days of Purim. It's the feast and fast of Esther, the Holocaust, and how it got flipped. Esther 9:29 says Esther was the daughter of Abihail. She was raised by Mordecai the Jew, and she did right with all authority of the king, at the end of this thing, and she made an edict. I'm going to read a couple quotes from Esther. Esther 2:8 says the king's command and edict was proclaimed that the young women were gathered at the citadel of Susa under the care of Haggai, and Esther was taken into the palace, and she was under the care of the custodian Haggai. It was Bigthan and Teresh that ended up being hanged on the tree because they plotted to overthrow the king. Haman he had pride, and he was just pissed off that Mordecai didn't bow to him. He wanted to destroy the whole religion. This Haman was the son of Hammedatha, the Agite, who was a Jew's enemy. It was like a Holocaust. He even offered to pay 10,000 silver to the assassins. And the king, they were drinking, I guess, he really didn't care. So, Esther had to convince the king. It was Esther 3:3. The letters were sent by posts to all the king's provinces to destroy, kill, and to cause to perish all the Jews, both young, old, little children, and women, on one day. They were going to do it on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. and they were going to take spoil for a prey. It was on the 13th day of the 12th month that the king's order came into effect, and it was the very day that the enemies of the Jews had planned to overpower them, but the tables were turned. The Jews overpowered those who hated them. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout. In King Xerxes' provinces, they were going to lay hands on those who were seeking their ruin. Not one man was able to stand against them. Fear made cowards of them all. What's more, the government officials, satraps, governors, and everyone who worked for the king helped the Jews because of Mordecai, and they were afraid of him. Mordecai was now a power in the palace. As Mordecai became more and more powerful, his reputation had grown. The Jews finished off all their enemies with the sword, slaughtering them right and left. That's Esther 5:9. As they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the palace complex of Susa, the Jews massacred 500 men. They also killed the 10 sons of Hamatha, the son of Hammedatha. Haman, the son of Hammedatha. He was the arch enemy of the Jews. But they took no plunder. On that day, it was all over. The number of those killed in the palace complex was given to the king. The king told Queen Esther, in the palace complex alone here in Susa, the Jews have killed 500 men, plus Haman's 10 sons. Thinking of the killing that must have been done in the rest of the provinces, what else do you want? And if it pleases the king, the queen responded, to give the Jews of Susa permission to extend the terms of order another day and have the bodies of Haman's 10 sons hanged in public display in the gallows. The king order was extended and they were publicly hanged. And the Jews went in again, and on the 14th day of Adar, they killed another 300 men in Susa, and they took no plunder. Meanwhile, the rest of the king's provinces, the Jews organized to defend themselves, freeing themselves from the oppression. On the 13th day of the month of Adar, they killed 75,000 of those who hated them. They didn't take any plunder. The next day, on the 14th day, they took it easy and celebrated with much food and laughter. But in Susa, since the Jews had banded together on both the 13th and the 14th day, they made the 15th day their holiday for laughing and feasting. And this is why the Jews living in the country, in the rural villages, remember the 14th day of Adar for the celebration, for their parties and the exchange of gifts. Mordecai wrote and sent copies to all the Jews in King Xerxes' provinces, regardless of distance, calling for an annual celebration on the 14th and 15th day of Adar as the occasion when the Jews got relief from their enemies, the month in which their sorrow was turned to joy. Mourning somersaulted into a holiday party of fun and laughter, sending and receiving presents and gifts to the poor. I mean, Purim is a holiday. We'll probably put it in the holiday thing. Another one. It's good to remember the Purim, the gallows, the murder plot, the slaughter, the hanging. When the days were expired, the king made a feast to all the people that were present in Shushan, that both great and small, 7 days in the court of the gardens king palace. And that was when the first queen, she didn't show up to that party. So King Ahasuerus threw a feast for 7 days in the court. The white, green, and blue hangings were on the wall. Red, white, and blue, and black was on the floor. The queen was having her own party for the women in the royal court, and the king called for the queen to come and bring the crown royal, but Queen Vashti refused, and he got mad, and his wise men convinced him to divorce her and clothe her in violence and not come in his presence anymore. And that's when the king went on the bachelor hunt to find the new queen. Okay.